Gray skies hung over the small town of Willow Creek like a wet blanket. The neon open sign in the window of Mason's diner flickered with tired resistance against the storm. Outside, the scent of black coffee and sizzling bacon filled the air. But it wasn't enough to chase away the heaviness pressing down on Juno. At just 22, Juno looked older than her years, not in wrinkles or gray hairs, but in the weariness that hung beneath her tired brown eyes. Her hands ached from carrying trays, her sneakers were soaked through from walking to work, and her heart was stretched thin over too many worries. She tucked a damp strand of hair back into her ponytail and leaned against the counter, watching. The rain beat against the windows. Another slow afternoon. Another paycheck barely enough to cover groceries, let alone the rent and Mom's medication. She dared not even look at the pharmacy slip in her apron pocket. She glanced down at the tip jar beside the register. $3.27 in change and a crumpled $1 bill. Her chest tightened. She'd smiled, chatted, and asked customers about their day like she always did. But people didn't tip like they used to. Just then the door jingled. Juno's head turned, more out of habit than hope. An older man stepped inside, pausing just past the doorway. He wore a dark coat soaked at the shoulders, and a white cane tapped the floor ahead of him with each careful step. His face was still, thoughtful. The pair of round, dark glasses rested on the bridge of his nose. Juno straightened immediately. "Hi." "There, sir," she said, her voice gentle. "Let me help you to a booth." The man turned slightly toward her voice and nodded. "Thank you, miss." She guided him slowly to the booth by the window, the warmest spot in the diner, though today it was just barely less gray than the rest. "Here we are," she said, helping him settle in. "I appreciate it," he replied softly, folding his hands over the top of his cane. Juno placed a laminated menu in front of him, then paused, unsure. "Would you like me to read the menu to you?" He gave a faint smile. "No need. I've been eating at diners like this long enough to know what I like. Grilled cheese sandwich, black coffee." "You got it," she said with a small nod. "Coming right up." As she walked back to the kitchen, Juno glanced over her shoulder. The man sat still, facing straight ahead. Not fidgeting, not tapping his foot or checking a phone like most. Just sitting in silence. Something about him felt different. It's scary or strange, just quiet, like he'd lived through too much. The grilled cheese sizzled on the flat-top grill. As the bread browned and the cheese melted, Juno leaned on the counter, watching the man from across the room. What's his story? She wondered. Where's he from? What does he see when he closes his eyes? Order up. The cook called. She plated the sandwich, poured the coffee into a ceramic mug, and carried both to his table. "Here we go," she said. "Careful, the coffee's hot." Reached out slowly and found the mug with practiced fingers. "Psst. You, Juno." She blinked. "How did you know my name?" "Your tag," he said with a smile. "I may not see faces anymore, but I still know how to read people. You've got a kind voice." Juno felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to compliments, not sincere ones. "Well, thank you," she said quietly. "Let me know if you need anything else." He nodded, and she left him alone to eat. Time passed. Slowly, the storm outside raged on, casting dim light through the diner's front windows. A few customers trickled in and out. Juno refilled Ray's coffee once, then again. He barely spoke, just quietly sipped his drink, nibbling at his grilled cheese. Still, she noticed the way his face softened when she spoke. How his shoulders relaxed when she asked if he wanted his coffee warmed. How his fingers paused when he heard her laugh at something the cook said. He was listening more than most people ever did. When he was finished, she brought the bill. "Take your time," she said. He placed the check folder in front of him, felt inside his coat pocket, and pulled out his wallet. He moved slowly, carefully feeling for the right bill. Then he slipped something into the folder, long with a small, folded piece of paper. He closed the folder gently and smiled in her direction. "You've been very kind to me today, Juno," he said. "More than you know." She tilted her head, unsure what to say. "I'd like to leave you something extra," he added, his voice lowering to something nearly sacred. "Just promise me you'll read the note before you spend it." It's Juno. Nodded slowly. "Okay." He stood up, his cane tapping against the floor as he made his way to the door. Just before stepping out into the rain, he turned back slightly. "Be good to yourself," he said. Then he was gone. Juno stared at the door for several seconds after it closed. The diner was quiet again, save for the hum of the coffee machine, and the drip-drip of a leaking pipe somewhere near the bathroom. She picked up the check folder, curious, and a little nervous. He seemed sweet, she thought. Maybe he left me a 20, or a 50 if I'm lucky. She opened it, and her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a crisp $1,000 bill and a folded yellowed note. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. Something told her before she even unfolded it that whatever was written inside wasn't ordinary, not even close. Juno sat in the booth where Ray had been just minutes earlier, her fingers frozen around the small folded paper he'd left behind. The $1,000 bill sat untouched on the table, too surreal to be real, too clean to belong in her tired, coffee-stained world. She looked at it again, heart thudding in her chest. $1,000? More than she made in 2 weeks, maybe 3. Her throat tightened. Who just gives that away, and why to me? Her hands shook as she unfolded the note. "Dear Juno, if you're reading this, it means I finally found someone who reminded me of her. I've been waiting over 40 years. 40 years ago, I walked into a diner like this one. I was a broken man physically, emotionally, and spiritually. 2 weeks earlier, I had lost my wife in a car accident. I survived, but not without cost. I lost my sight. I lost my joy. I lost my reason for waking up. I had nothing. I was nothing. That day, I didn't walk into the diner for food. I walked in because I didn't know where else to go. And then she came. A waitress probably your age, smiled at me like I mattered. She didn't pity me. She didn't rush me. She just saw me. She sat with me for 5 minutes while I cried over my coffee. She listened without asking. Her kindness was quiet, effortless. I didn't realize it then, but she saved me. The next day I came back to thank her, to tell her that her 5 minutes had pulled me out of a very dark place. But she was gone. I never got her name, never saw her again. Since then, I've eaten in diners across the country, hoping to find someone with the same light. And today, Juno, I found you. Your smile, your patience, your presence. They reminded me that the world still holds people like her. People like you. This money isn't a tip. It's a thank you. For carrying a light you don't even know you have. For saving a stranger without even trying. But this is more than money. This is a message. Use it for something that makes you feel alive again, not bills, and not rent. Something that's just for you. And one day, when you see someone who reminds you of you, pass it on with all my heart. Ray tears blurred the ink. Juno sat motionless as the words echoed in her mind. She read it again, slower this time, each line unraveling her composure like a thread pulled from a frayed sweater. She smiled at me like I mattered. She saved me. Today I found you. It was as if someone had looked past her stained apron and messy ponytail, past the unpaid bills and worry lines, and seen her. The her no one else seemed to notice anymore. The girl who tried so hard to stay kind in a world that kept beating her down. Her bottom lip quivered. She clutched the note to her chest, pressing it against the ache in her heart that had lived there for years. It felt like warmth in a frozen place. It's like someone had finally said, "You matter. I see you." The bell above the diner door jingled again, but she didn't look up. She couldn't. 10 minutes passed before she finally slid out of the booth, still holding the letter. She folded it carefully, gently, like it was made of glass sand, tucked it into the pocket of her apron. The $1,000 bill she held in her hand. She stared at it, numb. Her first thought was obvious. Rent, then groceries, then her mother's pain. Medication, it would all help so much. But Ray's words rang louder. Don't use it for bills. Use it for something that makes you feel alive again. She didn't even remember what that was anymore. Was it dancing? Reading under the stars? painting like she used to when she was a kid, her fingers stained with colors. When was the last time she did anything for herself? Back behind the counter, the diner hummed back to life. Plates clattered. Orders called out. The world had resumed. But something inside Juno hadn't. She picked up a damp towel and wiped the counter mechanically. But her thoughts were far away. What Ray had given her wasn't just money. It was permission. Permission to dream. Permission to believe she was more than just someone surviving shift to shift. That night when the diner closed, Juno walked home with soaked shoes and a full heart. She didn't stop at the grocery store, didn't log into her banking app. She didn't even tell anyone, not yet. Instead, she sat by her tiny apartment window and pulled out her sketch pad from the back of her closet. It was covered in dust. The last page was dated 3 years ago, before her mom got sick. Before her world turned into survival mode, she took out a pencil and started to draw not for money. Not for a grade, just because it made her feel alive. Just like Ray asked, the $1,000 bill stayed in her nightstand drawer for weeks. Not out of fear she'd lose it, but because it was more than just money now. It was hope in paper form, and every time life pushed too hard, she'd open the drawer, unfold Ray's letter, and read his words again. She didn't know it yet. But one day, 2 years later, in the same booth where Ray once sat, Juno would meet a girl who reminded her of her self-tired eyes, fake smile, trying too hard to hide how much she was breaking. And when that day came, she'd quietly slip an envelope into the girl's apron. Inside would be $1,000 and a note rewritten in Juno's careful handwriting. It started with, "If you're reading this, it means I finally found someone who reminded me of me." The sun filtered gently through the windows of Mason's diner, casting a golden warmth that hadn't been there in a long time. The old neon open sign still buzzed softly, and the walls were still lined with black and white photos of small-town baseball teams and Sunday potlucks. But something had changed. Juno no longer in a stained apron or worn-out sneakers stepped. Inside, with quiet confidence, her once-faded ponytail now shone clean and healthy, pulled back beneath a soft blue nursing cap. She wore pale scrubs, her ID badge clipped near her heart. A lot had changed since that rainy afternoon when a blind man named Ray handed her a folded note that shattered and rebuilt her world. She looked around, smiling. The same counter, the same coffee smell, the same cracked tile near booth 7, the very spot where Ray once sat. It had been exactly 2 years to the day, and she'd kept her promise. After Ray, Juno didn't just survive, she began to live. She took that $1,000 and enrolled in part-time night classes at the local community college. She painted again. She cried less. She breathed deeper. She began to remember who she was before life got hard. The letter had stayed with her, tucked inside a sketchbook she opened whenever her spirit wavered. And slowly, that folded piece of paper became more than a memory. It became a mission. Ray had passed her a light. Now it was her turn. "Hey there, can I help you?" Called a voice. Juno turned to see a girl at the register, maybe 17 or 18, with dull eyes and a forced smile that barely reached her cheeks. Her name tag read Mira. She looked exhausted, overworked, fragile, just like I was, Juno thought. Same uniform, same eyes. "Just grabbing a coffee," Juno replied. "But I'll wait at a booth." She chose booth 7, and as Mira brought her the coffee, Juno reached into her small purse and pulled out an envelope. Inside was a crisp $1,000 bill and a neatly rewritten note. The same message Ray had once written, only now it had her voice. "Dear Mira, if you're reading this, it means I finally found someone who reminded me of me. Not just a tired waitress with aching feet, but someone who gives kindness without expecting it back. Someone who doesn't even realize they're quietly saving lives just by being good. 2 years ago, a blind man left this same letter for me. His name was Ray. I never saw him again, but he changed my life. Not with money, though. It helped, but with hope. This is not a tip. This is your sign that you matter, that you are seen. Life gets better. Use this money not for bills, but for something that makes your soul feel awake again. And one day, when you see someone who reminds you of you, pass it on with love. Juno, formerly Booth 7, she folded the envelope and slipped it into Mira's apron pocket just as the girl turned to walk back toward the kitchen. Mira paused, surprised. What's this?
Ow.
Juno smiled gently. Just something someone once gave me when I needed it most. The young waitress looked confused but didn't open it. Not yet. Juno stood, touched her shoulder lightly, and whispered, "Promise me one thing." What? Mira asked. Read the note before you spend it, eh? Just like Ray had done, Juno walked away without waiting for a thank you, without needing anything in return. Outside, the sun was bright. As she stepped into the street, Juno could almost imagine Ray's voice in her ear. Be good to yourself. She looked up at the sky and smiled. She had no idea where Ray was now, or if he was even still alive. But in a way, it didn't matter. Because Ray wasn't just a man. He was a moment, spark, a whisper that said, kindness still exists. And now she was that whisper to someone else back inside the diner. Mira stood frozen near the counter, her hand shaking slightly as she unfolded the note. She read it once, then twice. By the third time, the words had blurred through tears. No one had ever written something like this to her before. No one had ever called her a light. She clutched the letter to her chest and looked out the diner window, toward the woman now disappearing down the street. She didn't know her name, but she would never forget her. One act, one note, one $1,000 bill, passed from one stranger to another, to another, to another each time. It didn't just save someone. It reminded them they were still worth saving. Kindness doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be passed on.